If you've ever wanted to try extreme diets, now you don't have to, because I decided to put the science to the test. I did carnivore and vegan back to back to see what the results were, and it was insane. But before I started, I had to first do my blood works, talk to a dietitian, talk to a doctor to know exactly what to do and how to approach it so I don't put my body at risk. What you're about to see is the intro session with a dietitian where we discuss cholesterol, exercise, fiber intake, stool color, everything in between before starting the carnivore and the vegan diet.
Alright, but then tell me then about your journey. So I know you wanted to like compare A to B, look at the cholesterol, look at your overall health.
Yeah.
But describe it in a bit more detail for me.
So my passion is educating consumers about what's going on in the food system, what's going on with the actual production of their food, and then as a curious consumer myself, getting behind the facts. If somebody says don't eat this or go low fat, I want to understand why.
Yeah.
Other people might be curious as well. So this is sort of my journey to get behind a few answers and a few questions that I have and share that with people. Personally, I'm an omnivore. I've always been an omnivore. I am very pro balanced diet in terms of longevity and in terms of the environment. But I can't say that I've not tested myself, and I haven't been focusing at all on living a balanced lifestyle.
Okay.
So I don't expect to have positive blood test results, but that gives us a good starting point. At the end of the day, I'm going back to omnivore, but it would just be good to see how my body responds to these two different types of diets.
Yeah. Some would say quite two different ends of the spectrum. I
Yes.
mean, no meat versus just meat.
Yeah.
Very high fiber versus almost no fiber.
Yes.
And both of them have been shown, like let's say if you look at inflammation and cholesterol, to have, let's say, if done correctly, can have it's a beneficial effect. So now it's
Okay.
interesting to kind of go between the two extremes.
Yeah.
And it's a more omnivore based diet. To actually see the results. And I think it's incredible that you're doing this journey.
Well, thank you for assisting. And I would actually love to hear your opinion as well, what you think and what the current science says on your end.
Great question. So if you're looking at, let's say, the more plant-based type of diets, that's been studied quite a bit more, a lot more research.
Yeah.
Let's say the width and depth of the research compared to the carnivore diet is quite a bit bigger, right? But then, if you're looking at that very high fiber, you're looking at, your microbiome, amazing benefits.
Yeah,
you're looking at your
ferritin.
overall cholesterol, really good benefits there. Your chance of being overweight, your chance of cardiovascular disease, anything from diabetes to high blood pressure to cholesterol, it's much less than compared to, let's say, a more Western diet, which we do have a lot of all the goodies, let's say. Right? So, but also, just a disclaimer to be done correctly, because on the other hand, I've seen a few people go, let's say, plant-based, but they just eating potatoes.
Yeah.
And that on the other hand, it's not necessarily the best way to go about it. So a proper structured, let's say, plant-based diet, if you talk about vegan, vegetarian, or lacto-ovo-vegetarian, is that that is really, really good. So from that standpoint, very fantastic. But then also there's three main concerns that we find, which is quite easy to overcome. So the one is protein, right? But that is, if you're looking at, for example, soya, complete protein profile, very similar to actually meat, chicken, and fish. So enough soya, then if you get your complementary proteins, all your chickpeas and your beans and your lentils, if you just have enough of that today, you still get the quality of amino acids that you need to.
Sorry, and the bioavailability of the amino acids, how does that compare on the plant-based side versus meat or animal source protein?
Great question. So look, at the end of the day, if you're looking at, let's say valine, right? So valine is one of the amino acids. So much higher in, let's say, meat, chicken, and fish, but you do still get valine in, like, let's say, lentils and legumes.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at 1 gram versus 1 gram, they're still very similarly absorbed. You don't get, like, let's say, plant-based valine and meat-based valine. It's still valine itself. So if you get it, it doesn't matter where you get it from. It's like water.
Okay.
If you get water from there or there, the body's still going to be absorbing it. So as long as you're getting your total profile, your total, let's say, quality and quantity of your amino acids, it's not really a big difference there. It's a bit more challenging to get. We talk about our branched chain amino acids, so valine, isoleucine, and leucine, but it can be done.
Okay.
Alright, and then the last one there is just the last two quickly is iron. So especially for ladies, because myself as a male adult, I need only 8 milligrams of iron. But now as an adult lady that has a normal menstrual cycle would need to have 18 milligrams.
Okay.
So it's more than double. So to get that can be more of a challenge to overcome. But you know, you can talk about supplements. Calcium is also another issue. And then the last one's going to be your B12. But those can be very easily supplemented to plug the gaps. And then it's sustainable. So I guess from that standpoint, it's incredible.
Okay.
But South Africa, we do love our meat. So
Yes.
it's a bit of a challenge. But then I can comment on the carnivore diet, or any questions or comments on what I've said there with the more plant-based side.
Well, no, it makes sense, and it so far aligns well with what is out there. Because let's be realistic, we do have supplements. So to say it is completely impossible to follow a vegan diet is wrong, because we have the technology available to supplement. Yes, you might have to supplement in higher doses, because supplement is not as taken up as readily as naturally occurring, but still then you do that. And my only question might be budget-wise, because since it is easier, more difficult to obtain all those different protein sources on an economic basis, is it possible? I don't know what your experience is in that.
More the plant-based.
Yeah, just first the plant-based before you go to carnivore.
Okay, just wanted to check. So look, there are very, very, let's say, much cheaper sources that you can go to. Look, you can easily make a plant-based diet very expensive.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
true.
if you're looking at your tofu and your tempeh, I mean, they can be quite expensive. But
Okay.
soya, if you're comparing, let's say, the cost of 100 grams of soya, let's say, with the protein versus meat, I mean, it's a fraction of the cost.
I see. Okay.
Right? And then your beans, I don't think they're dirty, but I mean,
yeah,
like, you know,
I
quite
understand
cheap.
what you mean.
But if you've got your basics right, if you've
I
got your
see.
foundations, that is then you still sorted. So that's what I like to do with my diets.
Okay.
No matter what type of diet it is, I give a variety of options. Let's say we're doing breakfast, lunch, and supper,
Yeah.
right? Is that for lunch I would give, let's say, 5, 6, or 7 options of starch, 5, 6, 7 options of protein, same for vegetables, same for fat. And I normally say, look, get what's in special. So to answer your question, it is one of the cheaper diets, but you can easily make it expensive.
Okay, I get it.
Longer answer, but yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, now moving on to the carnivore diet.
Yes.
I know there's not a lot of research on there, so do you have an opinion just out of what you've seen so far on the carnivore diet, and can it be sustainable in a longevity perspective?
Okay. There's 3, I'm going to highlight 3 of the biggest problems, or the
Okay.
hoo-has, should I rather say,
Yeah.
around the carnivore diet. And we can also, the same as I spoke about with the plant-based diet, with calcium, iron, B12 being an issue,
Yeah.
it can be modified or supplemented that we get less of the issue. So
Okay.
I also want to say that if you look at the carnivore diet, I want to talk about in general and how it can be modified. So the
Okay.
biggest
Yeah.
problem with the carnivore diet is the cholesterol side, right? Because now, also what we got taught is that a diet very high in saturated fat, which is more your solid fats at room temperature, so it's like the chicken skin, the fat in your meat,
Yeah.
your butter, right?
Yeah.
The lacquer sticky on your biltong, right? All those aspects. If you have too much of it, then your LDL levels, there's a big correlation between
Okay.
the two, right? But, and as well, almost, let's say, cholesterol itself found in food is almost exclusively found in saturated fats itself.
Okay.
But the thing is, if you're looking at very interesting research that has come out in the last few years, is that it's, yes, if your overall cholesterol is over 5 for the average person, it can lead to higher chance of cardiovascular issues, but it's much more to do with the ratio between the two. As in the ratio of the breakdown of your LDL, your HDL, and your triglycerides. I'm going to give you let's say, the standard answer we might be expecting, and then say, look, how can we make it more nuanced, right? So why is cholesterol a problem? It builds up on the side of the arteries, and then, if it gets too big, then blood can't go through, heart attack and stroke risk goes up. And this is a nice video just showing that if it's not controlled, it builds up over time, and then you can see blood struggles to go through. As well, if you already struggle with high blood pressure, is that if you now take a hose pipe but you squeeze it, the pressure goes higher, so there's also more chance for heart attack or stroke or hemorrhage happening. But now, from the LDL, or let's say from a cholesterol profile, you get your HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. So HDL, high density lipoprotein, LDL, low density lipoprotein. The way I like to explain it to people, think L is for lethal and H is for healthy. Okay, alright? But now, we often don't talk about triglycerides. Now that is actually one of the biggest missing pieces that we look at, and that's what I want to go through, because I know we have your Bloodworks, that we can go through that and say, you could actually have someone that has a normal cholesterol, but their ratios are out compared to, let's say yourself, where your cholesterol might be higher, but if your ratios are better, you actually at a less likely of a risk to get issues.
Yeah.
So, but it's much easier just to say for doctors, it's over 5, okay, here's a pill, change your lifestyle. So this is just the normal ranges, but we can skip through that. Also, if you are on statins, there's other things people can get, joint pain. Some people, because also the sun, right? When the sun hits our skin, there's cholesterol in there, and that then converts into active, form of vitamin D3. So people that are on statins, they're more likely to get low vitamin D levels, even in sunny South Africa. But this is the big one. What the LDL test does, it gives us the weight of the LDL.
Okay.
But if I have, let's say, 3 1 kilogram dumbbells versus 6 half a kilogram dumbbells, it's still going to weigh the same, right? But let's say the size of the dumbbells or the particles are different. Okay. So what the research shows, we talk about pattern A, the LDL, and pattern B. Okay. But you can see they both weigh the same, so to say. Now, what we actually see is that cholesterol actually has to go through this layer over here, this endothelial layer, and that actually in there is where the cholesterol really significantly starts to build up, which can put you at risk. Okay, but now the smaller particles, much more easier go through the epithelial layer. And this is a nice photo to show, is that the smaller particles can go through it, the bigger particles struggle. But also, just an important thing to mention, if someone has, like, let's say, uncontrolled diabetes or uncontrolled high blood pressure, and there is already damage there, as in it's let's say the integrity, structural integrity is less, the bigger particles can still go through. Okay. And now that is an important, let's say, thing to put a pin in to summarize the session. But now, how do we know what the size of the LDL particles are? Okay, so there's like an 8,000 rand test you can do, right? Or we could just do 2 maths equations. So let's rather do the 2 maths equations, right? So the research shows is that to kind of get an idea of how big your LDL particles are, they've seen that if your triglyceride to HDL ratio is below 0.87, there's a very high chance that your LDL particles will be bigger. Okay. So I think that's a good time for us to bring up your Bloodwork, if that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go through that. So if we're looking at your cholesterol profile, your total cholesterol, I think it's on the page above, is 6. So it's above 5. It's very bad. It's in the medical field. Doctors are already getting his prescription pad out for cholesterol tablets. But then the thing is, if we break it down, your triglycerides are actually very low. Not too low. They're actually healthily low. Your HDL, which we said is your healthy cholesterol, is actually fantastic. That's 1.6. We want between 1.2 and 2.4. And what's ironic, what I also find interesting about the whole your cholesterol needs to be under 5, is that your LDL and triglycerides could be higher, and your HDL, which is a healthy cholesterol, would be lower, compared to if you're in the exact same numbers with LDL and triglycerides, but your HDL is higher, which is healthier, that might push you over 5 and then be a red flag. So that's why the ratios are so important. But the big red flag, red lights going off is that your LDL is 4.5, we want it under 3. So if we put your triglycerides, which is 0.7, over your HDL, which is very good, 1.6, is that gives us a ratio of 0.44. And what do we want it? We want it below 0.87. So there's a very high likelihood that your LDL particles are bigger, right? Which is a good thing.
That's interesting because there's a recent presentation that I saw from Professor Renee Blau on the dairy matrix, which specifically mentioned, and now the light bulb went off, that the reason we see lower risk of cardiovascular disease with whole fat dairy specifically is because of the ratio of larger LDL particles with this small, and I eat a lot of dairy, so I'm like, okay, that's starting to make sense.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that, because it really is about the bigger particles. But now also we talk about, let's say, the cleaning up. So your HDL can also, let's say, trap some of the cholesterol and take it back to the liver, and if it's not in the system and it's taken back to the liver, it can't, let's say, block or stick on the sides, right? Okay. So how good is your cleaning up? So we're going to look at your HDL ratio. So HDL is 1.6, and then your total cholesterol, was it 5.5? It was 6, eh? Yes, it was 6.
I'm getting nervous.
There we go. So yours is 0.267. and we want to be above 0.25.
So it's like
So you're
just
just making it there. So what's interesting with that is that if you're looking at your risk, let's say, of cardiovascular disease, even though your LDL is high, even though your overall cholesterol is high, your risk of the actual thing plucking, let's say, going through the sides there is less, or it's on the lower range of that. Okay. So in that regard, what is the big challenge? And I'm very intentionally going to repeat myself. If someone asks me, should I follow the carnivore diet? Thing is, if you are a healthy weight, you are somewhat fit, you don't have uncontrolled, big one, or have not had recently had uncontrolled diabetes or high blood pressure, you most likely have very good structural integrity over here. So could you get away with, if your LDL levels go higher, which is very bad, the chance of getting a cardiovascular incident is not as much compared to if we had, let's say, John here, that is 130 kilograms, he smokes, uncontrolled diabetes, high blood pressure, doesn't exercise, sweats when he walks upstairs, and he wants to follow the carnivore diet where he's been already taking a lot of other bad foods. If the structural integrity is not as good, I would not recommend it. Even if both of you had the exact same cholesterol profile. So that's just the big thing I need to really dive through there. Any questions around that?
No, it's actually very interesting because obviously I don't have the expertise to analyze it in that way, so I'm enjoying this thoroughly.
So there's actually about 16 different things in food, okay, 2 of them are exercise, but 14 things in food that affect our overall cholesterol profile. So we can go through that in detail. I just want to show you one shot.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just to show, but if we're looking at your total cholesterol, LDL, triglycerides, and HDL, I mean things like losing weight, your trans fats, your monounsaturated fats, your omega-3, your omega-6, your overall cholesterol intake, your alcohol intake, your phytosterol intake, your sugar intake, aerobic exercise, anaerobic exercise. Like, actually, if we have time.
That's interesting. Explain to me why fructose, which is obviously found in fruits, is especially causative of cholesterol. How does that work?
Good question. And that has to almost exclusively do, it's actually the next slide, interestingly enough, just to say specifically the triglycerides. So I want to give you an example. A lot of my clients that come here that are uncontrolled diabetics or newly diagnosed on medication, their triglycerides are normally very high. And that's because your triglycerides more go up with more, let's say, I talk a lot about depth and intensity. So if you're having a lot of fructose, and it's a high portion for a longer period of time, your triglycerides, not your LDL, not your HDL, would then go up. And to kind of explain that, is that if you're looking at, let's say this being your blood sugar levels, and it needs to be between 4 and 10, but let's just for argument's sake, I'll say between A and B. Because if sugar's so bad, and fructose is so bad, why then do dietitians say that have fruit, right? Because it's got sugar, right? So is it not healthy or not? Okay? But it has to always look in context. So I'm going to talk, it's going to take me 2 minutes to go through, but we talk about GI and GL. So have you ever seen in the shops like low GI bread?
Yeah, so that is your glycemic index. That's how much your blood sugar is, but I haven't seen GL yet.
So that is a very good topic for us to go through. So GI, so essentially if you had fruit juice, that would exit your stomach very quickly. It's got no fiber, and very minimal fiber. So your blood sugar levels would spike, and then it can come down. So now, compared to, let's say for example, you had an apple smoothie. So it's a little bit chunkier, but the fibers are a little bit more broken down, meaning the body can access that sugar quicker.
I see.
You might have a medium GI response, compared to if you just have the original apple, it could do that to your blood sugar level. So exactly the same amount of sugar. Let's say all 3 of these is 15 grams of sugar. Okay. But now the thing is that your triglycerides will almost always only go up above the line. So for example, if you had 3 apples a day, but you spit it out throughout the day, that's not a problem at all. But if you had apple juice, like let's say 3, because for interest, 1 apple gives you about 1/3 of a glass of apple juice. So if you had a glass of apple juice, and let's say that even though
let's say the total increase of volume between this and this and this and that is the same, like the volume-wise, the grammage-wise, the effect on your triglycerides would be much more
Okay,
okay.
that's very interesting.
And now if you have diabetes or if you have insulin resistance, is that where normally if you ate, let's say, a fruit smoothie, I'm drawing too many lines here, is that, let's say if my insulin sensitivity is very good, a fruit smoothie would maybe do that, but someone that has higher insulin levels or has more insulin resistance, exact same drink might then do that.
Okay, wow.
Okay, so just to explain that, but now, and it more so is that, so if you're having fructose in the form of sweets and cookies and
very
fruit juice,
condensed, low quality type food.
yes, or like low fiber that the body can access the food quicker,
I see.
that's more the problem.
Okay.
Now, glycemic load, just a quick summary on that, is that even, because low GI bread, we can say it's fantastic, but if you have 8 slices of low GI bread, your blood sugar levels will still go up to an extent. So the best way to explain that is, let's say this is 1 slice of low GI bread, 2 slices, 3 slices, 4 slices. So even though something can be healthy, is that if we have too much of it, it can still raise your blood sugar levels. And the same way is that if you now have, let's say, a third of a glass of juice versus half a glass of juice versus 1 glass of juice, you can see that this time above the line is much less than that time above the line. So that's why it always depends in context. And if just one more cherry on the cake is that if you have, for example, it depends what you eat it with. So let's say you just had yourself a sandwich. So low GI bread, let's say some lean ham, some lettuce, tomato, and some cheese.
Yeah.
Now that's going to take quite a while for your stomach acid to break that down. So if you have juice alone, it will exit at quite a quick rate. But if you had that exact same amount of juice after you've now just had the sandwich, that sugar or that, let's say, apple juice will exit the stomach slower. But fruit, in its original form, that's spread well throughout the day, let's say between meals, is excellent.
Okay, fantastic.
So it's all about context.
I like that.
Okay. All right. So that was a long answer, but any other questions around that?
No, that's very interesting.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just to go back to your original questions, you asked what is the big problems around carnivore? Cholesterol, big one.
Okay.
Number 2 is almost one of the biggest contrasts is fiber. So especially if someone already has gut issues, like constipation, if they cut out all their fiber, it could get worse. But there's a big but. If, for example, someone has irritable bowel syndrome, is that and they are eating foods which are causing constipation. Some people the gut issues get resolved or are better, not because of something they're taking out, or it's because there's something they're taking out, not something that they were having. As in, if they had the right type of fiber, they would actually be fine.
Yeah.
But because they're cutting it out, they feel better, even though they could actually feel much better if they just got the right type of fiber. So that's why some of my clients that I've spoken to, gut health has improved tremendously. But some people, they actually get piles and hemorrhoids because their stool is so hard now.
Yeah,
so we have to ask ourselves that challenge.
Yeah.
What
What I've seen from other people is that they say, and I don't know how true this is, that when you have a lot of refined carbs, that's when you need increased fiber. But if you don't have a lot of refined carbs, then, such as with a ketogenic diet, then the fat component sort of, we don't want to say replace the function because that's incorrect, but it in a very inaccurately described way, lubricates the bowel. It allows ease of movement, let's say, where fiber isn't that issue, and probably because the gut microbiome completely changes. So I don't have experience in that regard. Maybe you can comment or just explain that better, why people actually do well and don't have constipation issues on a ketogenic diet.
Yes, that's two interesting points that you brought up over there. So number one is, if you're looking at the carnivore diet, okay, butter doesn't have fiber, eggs doesn't have fiber, meat doesn't have fiber, and I mean fish and chicken doesn't have fiber there. So there's no fibers, like literal pieces you can think of, strands that need to now be, let's say, properly helped through the gut over there. But the fat component is incorrect. So so in some cases it will help, but then it's for the wrong reasons. So let me explain. Is that
Now, some people find that they still have a bit more of a looser stool, but I ask them the color of their stool.
Okay.
Because have you noticed that basically no matter what we eat, like if you eat the rainbow of colors, your stool always, or should be, comes out brown.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. Why is that? And that's because your gallbladder makes bile, and then bile comes out quite green, and then it goes to more of a yellowy, and then it goes to more of a brown. Okay, so as the bile starts to break down.
Yeah.
So no matter what you eat. That. But if you had severe diarrhea, you might have noticed your stool maybe a bit more orange or a bit more yellow, bit bile, but like snot-like consistency,
Yes.
and then a bit more green, and that's because the bile has gone so quickly through the system.
I see, okay.
But if someone has, for example, had their gallbladder removed, so you still make bile, right? But it's like a steady trickle. If you have too much fat, you can have, let's say, a softer stool, but for the wrong reason, because it's the undigested fat, which can create like a lubrication around the stool. But then that in itself is problematic because now the thing is now it also traps a lot of the nutrients. So then you're not getting all the food out. So if it does help, it's not for the right reasons.
Okay, but if the consistency is still solid but passes through easily, what is that indicative of?
So if you're looking at, as a dietitian, if someone comes to me and says that they have these loose balls over here, that's normally a sign of either you're not drinking enough water, but this is the bigger part of it, you're not having enough soluble fiber. So soluble fiber is your more soft gummy fibers, so that's going to be like your avocado, your white rice, your beans, your banana, a soft carrot, for example. So if you left like oats or rice in water, they're not to become very gooey, and that binds the stool. So if it's not bound together, it means that that's the issue. But now, the thing is, with carnivore diet, you don't need any of that.
Yeah, so I can probably expect butt droppings.
Yes, so butt dropping is very common. But especially if you're not having enough water with that, is that your large intestine still pulls out a lot of water, no matter who you are, in your large intestine. Because at the start of your large intestine, your stool is more like a clumpy butternut consistency, and the large intestine is about 1.2 meters one about. So it's not really that long. It has to go from clumpy butternut to like semi-solid stool. So the large intestine is pulling out quite a bit of water. So and the thing is that if you, now with the carnivore diet, if you don't chew your food properly, you're not drinking enough water, the stool can sit longer in your gut, which means that you're pulling out more water, which means that the time it goes out your rectum, it's like quite hard, and that can then cause like piles and that. But the thing is, if you move for interest, like when you literally walk and exercise, you have enough water and you chew your food properly. Because we talk about fibers, or fiber of vegetables and plants, and we talk about meat fibers. That if you chew that properly, I won't say you won't get it, but the chance of it being less is much more significant. So enough water, enough movement, and chewing enough, that should still prevent the issues. Also with that, things like the gut-brain axis. We know that your quality and quantity variety of fibers plays a big role in a lot of health benefits as well. So, something that's not really been studied as much. What are the long-term effects of not having any fiber, with that, on that gut-brain axis over there? So that's something that also, as dietitians, we're still waiting for that. So, because it's quite a new, the carnivore diet is more of a new research.
But I'm sure you can draw some conclusion just from the ketogenic diet, and there a lot of people have reported improved brain function, improved memory, improved mental health actually, as in terms of from a psychological perspective. So why would that be?
So for different reasons. So it's a very good question. But what you for interest, serotonin, which is our general happy hormone, right? About 85% of it is made in the gut, which is insane, right? And your insoluble,
trust your gut.
Trust your gut. There you go. Right? But your insoluble fiber, so just now we spoke about soluble fiber, the soft gummy fiber. Now on the other side you get your insoluble fiber. So that's your rough and tough. So it's your all bran, it's your low GI bread, it's your popcorn, it's your salad, it's your celery, it's your lettuce, the crunchy stuff, your brown rice. Now that insoluble fiber when it gets to the large intestine, your gut microbiome makes something called short chain fatty acids.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that is really good for your overall gut health.
Okay.
And then that as well is just very good. It has lots of, let's say, a ripple effect on your overall mental health. You make a lot of serotonin from that.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, so a lot of people get benefit in that regard. Now, on a ketogenic diet, also carnivore diet, because it's basically no carbs, you are going to go into ketosis, and then you are now, if your blood sugar levels are better controlled. So we always have to ask ourselves, where are we coming from? So if someone was having a lot of sugar, I'm using extreme now, like a lot of sugar, a lot of bad foods, their blood sugar was all over the show.
Yeah.
Now you're only having meat, chicken, fish, eggs, butter, which breaks down incredibly slowly. Like your blood sugar profile is so sustained in the day. They might say, oh, but I have much better energy. But if you're comparing that to if you were having Rice Krispies for breakfast,
you're not going to have that.
You're not going to have that dip. So you can say, I feel much better.
Okay.
But it's just because of you doing something better that's sustaining you for longer, right? So that can help there. And then also because meat, all the things I mentioned now, because it takes a long time to break down. Like let's say oats is fantastic, but I mean meat can take 6 to 8 hours to properly digest. So you've got that longer type of, it's a slower release where people can just feel better. Some people also just because of the reduction in the volatility in blood sugar levels, from a mental clarity standpoint, they can just function better. Also, some people function better on ketones. Some people, because they don't like to have so much food for breakfast. Now, a lot of my clients, they'll end up just having like lunch and supper doing the carnivore diet. So they end up doing something like intermittent fasting. So they're not spending as much time in the morning in rest and digest. So you're more in your sympathetic system, which means that you can it's a concentrate better, your heart levels are lower. So, we have to ask ourselves from which route are we getting the benefits? And I think it's for different reasons. Okay, any other questions on that?
Vitamin C.
So that is a very interesting one because your meat makes L-carnitine. L-carnitine is found a lot in your meat products, which, if it's so interesting, also the video that we did, is that the functions of vitamin C and L-carnitine, your body's need for vitamin C is less. Okay. And L-carnitine can kind of buffer that kind of, let's say, the functions of vitamin C. But we don't know if it's, even though logically, and if you see it in the research, it does help. We don't know the long-term effects. So I would still be like, listen, just take like 100 milligrams of it. It's not going to throw you out of ketosis. It's got no fiber. Take that like 100 milligrams once or twice a week. Because I don't want you to now have like bleeding gums or something. But
I don't know if it's true, but apparently some organs and like spleen and I don't know what else, it does contain small vitamins of vitamin C. Is that true?
It does, not significant, but on the contrary, you are having a significant amount of it in a carnivore diet. So you would need to, over a long period of time, you'd more be worried about it. If you're having a lot of organ meat within a carnivore diet and you're eating a significant amount of those foods for a long enough time, the risk of you developing it is much less.
So there's still the terms and conditions apply.
There's still like it depends type of thing. But then let's chat then about you. Do you want to go the carnivore diet? Do you want to go the vegan diet first?
Here we decided to do the carnivore diet first. We did an in-body scan and discussed a few things I had to keep in mind going forward.
There's two things, if we don't do correctly, it could actually slow down your results. And in some cases, actually reverse them. So, especially from a muscle standpoint. So number one is that if you are training 3 times a week, because you actually need about 48 hours to fully recover a muscle that you have loaded. As in, you can walk every single day, all day, that's fine. But you can't be doing squats on one day, and then from a, let's say, recovery strength and doing lunges the next day. You've got to ideally get 48 hours to fully recover. And then, so the fact that you're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or if you did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would say just make sure that it's like leg day, upper body, and then like push-pull leg program, something like that. Because otherwise, if you overlapping, let's say you did squats today and let's say a heavy cycle session tomorrow, you actually see quite often people come back and say, but I did more legs than upper body, but on my scan I've actually lost muscle in my legs and I gained more in my upper body. You think that that's totally the opposite of what you'd expect, but you're not giving enough time to recover. Thus your muscle breakdown can still be faster than what you can build it up, especially in calorie deficits. Okay, but you're spreading it out in the week, not to worry about that. The other thing is intensity. So if you want to go fast, you have to have carbs. Okay. Meaning to preserve your muscle.
Okay.
So if you're exercising at a very high heart rate for an extended period of time, like you said, Jason, on Saturday I'm going to do a 2-hour cycle, but I'm in zone like for the whole time. I would say, listen, your results would not look as good as you thought, but a 45-minute session, which your glycogen levels, which is the starch in your muscles, can mostly replenish between those 2 days, and you have a 45-minute good. Let's say if it's body weight and weight training, that's fine. But if you were going to do an hour of cardio at a high heart rate zone, your body needs carbs. The research shows that the higher your heart rate, the more carbs you need, and you can actually break down your muscle. Now here's something interesting. It is quicker for your body to break down your own muscle and convert it into glucose than fat within exercise. We burn most of our fat from exercise post-exercise. So if your glycogen stores, the starch in your muscles is low, and you're not eating carbs, and the ways like, listen, that I need the quickest source, I'm going to burn down a muscle, which is the opposite of what you want to try to do. So the fact that your intensity is good, it's not more than 45 minutes, 3 times a week in spread, I'm happy. So just
and can I do a cardio in between, like jog, let's say?
So as long as you're aiming between 60 and 65% of your max heart rate, that won't be pushing you over the limit where your body would need significantly more carbohydrate to break down muscle. So you could run at a good pace for about 20 minutes, but after that, your glycogen stores are gone and it can go downhill. So if it's a 60-65% max heart rate, you just need to work it out. I can help with that if you want. It's 220 minus your age, it's your max heart rate, 65% of that. And then with that, if you don't go above that, and you can do a longer session like 30 minutes, that's fine.
Okay, so when I exercise, do you think I can just top up with a little bit of dairy to make sure that I'm okay during the exercise period?
Yes.
Okay.
So we also, if you're going to have carbs, try and have it in and around training. So that is definitely that.
We finalized my exercise program and diet, and now it was time to go to the doctor.
I've done a few studies or I've read a few studies also based on patients that are obese and how it's like a growing epidemic and things like that. But they did a study based on the gut microbes in the patients. So the little bacteria that lives within the skinnier population compared to your overweight population. And they actually found that the bacteria differed. And that's the way they had to metabolize their food. And what they then did is they cultured those bacteria and they gave it to the overweight population, and they actually lost weight.
Oh, that's incredible.
So there's many different things to bring into a diet, and I think carnivore might be a bit exclusive. That it's too few, or it's too narrow in a sense that you don't get what you fully need. But if it is something that does work for you, then go for it. But I think a big red flag would be to just check the cholesterol that comes from the plant fat, not the plant fat, the animal fat, and that maybe just to cut it down a bit. And then also the way we cook our meat and prepare our meat. Usually if you have like a nice fry and things like that, you add a lot of salt. That's the thing that will in the end influence your blood pressure, is what we do with our meat.
Maybe it's a good place to just start with my blood results. I wanted to see where I come from. You know, what is my cholesterol? Because obviously that's an indicator from what I understand about cardiovascular health. But I also wanted to test for CRP to see if there's maybe any inflammation, because a lot of people complain about inflammation or associate that with high meat intake. So maybe you can just guide me to say if diet has anything to do with it, and do you expect any differences on such short term?
In the short term, it's quite difficult to say. So, you know, people also take like the protein shakes and things like that. They tend to drink a lot of water, mostly because of the accumulation of the protein within the kidney. And I think that's where it comes from as well. troponin not only is a heart marker, but it does increase as well in kidney dysfunction.
Okay.
So when we have patients with chronic kidney disease or kidney failure, we always expect them to have a higher troponin of 40 to 50 going up. And then mostly when we check for heart health, when we do have patients with heart attacks, you actually check for a trend in the troponin. So let's say I've had the acute chest pain for a short while, maybe it's like 30 because it started 2 minutes ago. If you remeasure it in 2 hours, it will be 200 plus. So we monitor the trend because it tells you that cardiac enzyme is now telling you, okay, this dropped.
Okay.
But we do expect it to elevate in our renal dysfunction patients as well. And then CRP will increase in inflammation, but there's a lot of things that influence your CRP, and it's also not of value as a single entity, but we also monitor it in a trend. So usually when you have the flu, it can be 300, 400. As the flu progresses and comes down, you can actually watch it drop over a few days, monitor it every second day. And then it's also a way we monitor response to treatment. So if I give an antibiotic and I can see my CRP is dropping, it's working. So CRP in itself will tell you there's inflammation, but if you bruise yourself, you walk into a wall, your CRP will elevate minimally. I think also just with the whole gut health type of thing and diet and why we bring certain things into our diet, bowel inflammation will not necessarily pick up on your CRP, but will more present with your physical symptoms of your IBS, your irritable bowel, cramps, bloating, that feeling of fullness after eating a little bit. Like all those things will come in, and that's where I think a lot of people also turn to more like the pro-inflammatory diet, having your things that take longer to digest, which is not really where your carnivore comes in, but more your plant-based diet plays a role in your gut inflammation. You've done a few blood tests, so certain things do influence your cholesterol, not only your diet. So pregnancy, being on a contraceptive, they can naturally increase your cholesterol.
Can you explain to me why is that? Because I was very surprised when I was pregnant here almost 2 years ago, that I found, oh goodness, I had high cholesterol.
So the exact physiology I can't really explain, but basically what the body does is you go into a state of insulin resistance when you're pregnant, mostly because you are storing and feeding for more than one, which means the things that you consume need to remain in your body for longer, so your sugar needs to be circulating for longer, and thus your receptors become resistant and don't take up the sugar immediately because then there's not enough to go around. You go into a storage mode during that time, and then it elevates, and it has to do with the way your hormones play on your receptors as well, because another time that females do go into insulin resistance is during menopause, and that's why a lot of females gain weight during menopause, is because your body naturally assumes that insulin resistance in that time.
Can you also tell me about homocysteine? That's also one of the blood tests that I did that I'm quite curious about.
So homocysteine is an amino acid produced by the body, but in order to produce it, you need certain vitamins to play a role to be able to produce it to create that relevant amino acid. And when you have a deficiency of your B3, B6, B12, then you end up not producing enough homocysteine, and you'll have a deficient level due to the vitamin imbalance. So when you do follow a certain diet and you notice, okay, but my B12 is low, and that's why a lot of people also have an anemia, so your anemias can be B12 driven, then it will influence your homocysteine levels.
Well, I'm happy about that. So just quickly summarizing my results.
Here we just went over my results, and I'll keep them on screen for you to see exactly what the starting ones were. I then had a few questions that I just wanted to make sure of.
But basically what would elevate your transferrin is inflammation. So patients that have gone through surgery can expect to have a higher transferrin, mostly because you broke through the skin and the body went through something that's not natural. So that's also an inflammation marker like your CRP. So a lot of times when people have fractures and things, their transferrins are also high. But basically what transferrin does, transferrin is the little car that carries your iron to where it needs to be absorbed.
But what does a low level mean?
Your stores might be full,
I
but the
understand.
car that's carrying it to the store in that moment is not loaded.
Okay.
So you need something to be there to load onto the car and take it.
Okay, so that's obviously something that I'll monitor then. So I think we're at a good point. I know what I have to work with. I did my in-body scan as well, so I'll be monitoring my fat and my muscle mass and gain. I think the next big thing is just to check my blood pressure as well, as that is also related. And if there's anything else that you want to discuss about it or recommend that I keep track of as well, then I would love to hear that. So maybe just answering the second question first, knowing that basically all my severe indicators like CRP and homocysteine and those things are at normal levels. Do you think those are tests that I need to run again in 6 weeks, or is it sort of a thing where it looks like I'm healthy and it won't drastically change in 6 weeks' time, either this way or that way?
Yeah, I think the best to monitor, if you do stick to a diet, ideally the body will adapt change in 3 months. So I think 6 weeks might be like a little early, but we can always test it and see maybe there is something that has significantly changed within 6 weeks, and then it will give us a little bit more insight.
After taking my blood pressure and discussing all the risks, I was now ready to go over to Carnivore. Make sure to check out the next episode where I discuss my results.